Before 1870, Germany wasn't one country. It was a mix of 39 smaller states, all German-speaking but politically divided. Some were big, like Prussia and Austria. Others were small, like Bavaria and Württemberg. Prussia, the strongest of the group, wanted to bring them all together. But Austria had its own plans, and France definitely didn't want a powerful neighbor right next door. The man driving the push for unification was Otto von Bismarck, the Prussian chancellor. He believed Germany wouldn't unite through speeches or treaties, only through war. And that's where the Franco-Prussian War comes in. France, ruled by Napoleon III, was worried. Prussia had already beaten Denmark and Austria in earlier wars. Now, if Prussia united all the German states, it would be the most powerful country in Europe. Napoleon III needed a win to boost his popularity at home and stop Prussia's rise. But Bismarck was way ahead of him. He carefully set up the conditions so that France would be the one to declare war, making Prussia look like the victim. Once that happened, the southern German states, which were hesitant before, would rally behind Prussia. That's exactly what happened. The war wasn't just about borders. It was the final push to unite Germany under one empire. And it worked. By the end of the war, Germany was no longer just an idea. It was a real, unified country with a new emperor and a powerful army. This war reshaped Europe. France was humiliated, Germany became a top power, and the tensions that were sparked here eventually exploded into World War I decades later. So, if you want to understand how modern Europe took shape, the Franco-Prussian War is a key moment to look at. Let's go through it together, piece by piece. Let's go back a bit. After Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated in 1815, Europe's leaders wanted to make sure no single country became too powerful again, so they created the German Confederation, a loose group of 39 German states. Austria led the group, but Prussia was rising fast. Throughout the mid-1800s, Prussia worked hard to increase its power. It reformed its army, improved its railways, and built up its economy. Bismarck, who became chancellor in 1862, believed in using force to achieve political goals. His famous saying was that the great questions of the day would be decided not by speeches and majority decisions, but by blood and iron. In 1864, Prussia and Austria teamed up to defeat Denmark and take control of the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein. But soon after, they turned on each other. In 1866, Prussia defeated Austria in the Austro-Prussian War and created the North German Confederation, a union of northern German states led by Prussia. However, the southern German states stayed independent. They were Catholic, while Prussia was Protestant. They were also nervous about giving up their own power. Bismarck knew that if he wanted a united Germany, he'd need a way to bring these southern states on board. France, under Napoleon III, was worried about Prussia's growing strength. Napoleon III wanted to keep Germany divided, but he also had problems at home. His empire was becoming less popular, and a successful war could make him look strong again. Then came the Spanish succession crisis. Spain offered its throne to a relative of the Prussian king. France didn't like the idea of being surrounded by Hohenzollerns, the Prussian royal family, on both sides. Napoleon III demanded that Prussia drop the claim and promise never to bring it up again. King Wilhelm I of Prussia politely refused. But Bismarck took a report of their conversation, called the Ems Dispatch, and edited it to sound like the king had insulted the French. When the French public read it, they were furious. Napoleon III declared war on Prussia in July 1870. This was exactly what Bismarck wanted. Now the southern German states joined Prussia, and Germany went to war as one. The Franco-Prussian War began in July 1870. At first, many thought France would win. After all, France was a major European power with a long military tradition. But it soon became clear that Prussia and its allies were better prepared. Prussia had a modern, efficient army. Its officers were well-trained, and its soldiers were disciplined. Even more importantly, Prussia had invested in railroads, allowing it to move troops quickly. It also had powerful Krupp steel cannons, which were better than the French artillery. The French, on the other hand, had problems. Napoleon III's government was disorganized, and many of his generals were old and stuck in outdated ways of thinking. The French army had not been modernized, and its weapons were inferior. The first major battles showed how unprepared France was. In August 1870, at the Battle of Weissenburg, a French force was quickly overwhelmed by the Prussians. This was followed by the Battle of Spitzeren and the Battle of Mars-la-Tour, where Prussia again came out on top. Then came the Battle of Sedan in early September. This was the turning point. Prussian forces surrounded the French army, and Napoleon III himself was captured. The image of the French emperor surrendering to the Prussians shocked Europe. Napoleon III was soon overthrown and the French Empire collapsed, replaced by the Third Republic. Even though the emperor was gone, the French people kept fighting. They organized new armies and resisted the Prussian advance, but Prussia had the upper hand. One of the most dramatic parts of the war was the Siege of Paris. Starting in September 1870, Prussian forces surrounded the city. The people of Paris were cut off from the outside world, and they had to come up with creative ways to send messages, even using hot air balloons. As the months dragged on, food ran out. Parisians ate rats, dogs, and even zoo animals to survive. Finally, in January 1871, Paris surrendered. The war was effectively over. But Bismarck wanted to make a statement. On January 18, 1871, in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, Wilhelm I was crowned Emperor, Kaiser, of the new German Empire. This was deeply symbolic. Germany had been born, right in the heart of France's most famous palace. The Franco-Prussian War wasn't just a conflict between two countries. It was the final act in Bismarck's plan to unify Germany. The southern German states, which had been unsure before, now stood with Prussia. A new, powerful Germany had emerged, changing the balance of power in Europe. For France, the defeat was devastating. It lost the provinces of Alsace and Lorraine, rich in resources and symbolic value. The French also had to pay huge reparations, 5 billion francs. But the effects went beyond just territory and money. In France, the loss sparked a deep desire for revenge. The phrase revanchisme, the political movement focused on taking back Alsace-Lorraine, became central to French politics for decades. In Germany, the victory boosted national pride, but it also set up future problems. Bismarck had unified Germany, but he had done it through war. The new German Empire was built on military strength, and that mindset would continue into the 20th century. The Franco-Prussian War also shifted the alliances in Europe. France, humiliated and isolated, began looking for allies. Germany, now the top power, became the focus of fear and suspicion. Britain, Russia, and Austria-Hungary all watched nervously. The balance of power had been upset. Bismarck, for his part, tried to keep the peace after the war. He didn't want more conflicts. But the tensions he had helped create wouldn't go away. In many ways, the Franco-Prussian War set the stage for World War I. The rivalry between France and Germany, the rise of nationalism, the arms race, all of these had their roots in this moment. It's also worth noting how quickly things changed. In just 6 months, the map of Europe was redrawn. And it all came from one war, carefully planned by Bismarck, but filled with unpredictable events. So, what does this all mean? First, the Franco-Prussian War shows how quickly history can change. One year, Germany was a collection of small states. The next year, it was a unified empire. And it wasn't done through peaceful talks. It was done through war. Second, it shows the power of nationalism. Bismarck knew that if he could make Germans feel like they were under attack, they would come together, and it worked. But nationalism is a dangerous tool. It can unite, but it can also divide and lead to conflict. Third, the war left deep scars. France didn't just lose land, it lost pride. Alsace-Lorraine became a symbol of national humiliation. French school children grew up learning about the lost provinces, and politicians promised revenge. This anger helped shape French foreign policy and military planning right up to 1914. In Germany, the victory created a sense of superiority. The new empire saw itself as the strongest power in Europe, and many Germans believed that military strength was the key to national greatness. This mindset didn't disappear. It only grew in the years leading up to World War I. Finally, the Franco-Prussian War reminds us that political decisions have long-term consequences. Bismarck may have achieved his short-term goal of unifying Germany, but he also set Europe on a path toward even bigger, deadlier conflicts. Today, Germany and France are close allies in the European Union. They work together on trade, diplomacy, and peacekeeping. But that partnership was built on the memory of past wars, including the Franco-Prussian War. Understanding this history helps us see how Europe got to where it is now. Thanks for sticking with this story. It's easy to think of the Franco-Prussian War as just an old, dusty piece of history, but when you look closer, you see how much it shaped the world we live in. It created modern Germany, reshaped European politics, and set the stage for 2 world wars. It also raises big questions. Can a country be built through war? Is national pride worth the cost of conflict? And once you stir up nationalist feelings, can you ever really control them? If you've ever visited Paris or Berlin, or even just looked at a map of Europe, you're seeing the results of this war. Borders, alliances, rivalries, they all have roots in what happened between 1870 and 1871. I'd love to hear what you think. Was Bismarck a genius, or did he plant the seeds for disaster? Was the Franco-Prussian War unavoidable, or could it have been stopped? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you want more history stories like this, where one event changed everything, make sure to follow along. We've got a lot more to explore.